family ties, or partners in crime. A mother and son duo now face the possibility of being locked up for life for the killing of a Michigan woman at a Golden Corral. That victim is the son's ex-girlfriend. The son had allegedly been stalking her for some time. I'll break down the latest. For Law and Crime News, I'm Kennedi Walker. A mother and son bound by blood, now bound by bars. Windy Weatherford and Deondre McLilly were found guilty of gunning down 20-year-old Alicia Jackson Skaggs at a Golden Corral in Flint Township, Michigan. It's a brutal crime that prosecutors say was a culmination of a toxic pattern of stalking and abuse. Let's start from the beginning. Before her name was mixed with tragedy, Alicia was a sister, daughter, and niece, a young woman full of life and dreams and an infectious smile. But behind the smile, prosecutors say, was fear. Fear of the man who was once a part of her world. On March 29, 2022, Alicia and her boyfriend went out for dinner. Unaware that her past was about to catch up with her, Alicia was simply going on about her day. But at the same time, she was living with the ongoing threat of her ex, Deondre McLilly. Alicia had an active stalking and domestic violence complaint open against him. But despite her attempts to protect herself, the danger was not far behind. According to the Flint Township Police Department, Alicia and her boyfriend were sitting in a black sedan outside of a restaurant when McLilly and Weatherford pulled up behind them in an SUV. The duo had followed her there. When Alicia noticed McLilly was beginning to step out of the car, panic set in. She and her boyfriend quickly took off driving, but McLilly did not allow them to escape. As they sped away, McLilly started shooting at them. What happened next is what police described as an absolute failure of parenting. The mother and son allegedly began chasing Alicia down several streets, Weatherford behind the wheel and McLilly in the passenger seat. Finally, Alicia and her boyfriend thought they had lost them and pulled into the parking lot of Golden Corral. But just as they thought they were safe, their worst fear came true. The same SUV that had stalked them down the road had now rolled into the lot behind them. McLilly got out and allegedly fired several more rounds at the car Alicia and her boyfriend were in. They tried to escape, but their sedan crashed into the Golden Corral sign. It was then that Alicia's boyfriend realized that she had been shot in the head. He rushed to her side, but according to ABC 12 News, the boyfriend told police that McLilly, who was still on foot, continued to aim a gun at them after the crash. So the boyfriend fired 2 shots in self-defense. The mother and son fled the scene, but their escape was short-lived. As they drove off, witnesses called 911, providing a detailed description of the suspect's vehicle. Thanks to their quick thinking, Michigan State Police were able to track them down. McLilly ran from the vehicle, but was caught. Alicia was rushed to the hospital, but died from her injuries 2 days later. The mother and son both face up to life in prison. McLilly was found guilty of 26 counts, including second-degree murder, a variety of weapons offenses, stalking, and domestic violence. His mother, Weatherford, was found guilty of 19 counts, including second-degree murder and a variety of weapons offenses. And joining me to talk more about this is law enforcement expert Will Spilar. Will, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, Kennedy.
So let's start with the charges. McLilly, who is the victim's ex-boyfriend, was found guilty on 26 counts, including second-degree murder, while his mother was convicted on 19 counts. Can you break down what these charges mean and how prosecutors were able to prove them?
Well, it didn't seem like it was that tough of a case to prove. It was pretty brazen and open. It looked like there was a pursuit, there were shots fired from a vehicle, and then cornering the person in a parking lot and then firing more shots into the car. So proving the facts of the case didn't seem like it would be that difficult. I'm sure there was video and eyewitness testimony from the surviving victim. But as far as the charges go, in Illinois, when we talk about murder charges, first-degree murder is malice aforethought. Second-degree murder, typically we don't see that much in Illinois because that's like sudden and intense passion. And if it's the same in Michigan, a lot of times you'll see the sudden and intense passion when it comes to domestic situations. The weapons charges, I'm sure he wasn't supposed to have guns. And the way they put the multiple counts on, it's almost like piling on, I guess you could say. Really, you think if it's one victim, you have one second-degree murder charge, if there's one gun recovered, but it doesn't work that way. There's a lot of other factors that come in when they start to add on these charges.
Yeah, when you hear about 26 counts and 19 counts, it makes you wonder, like, how many years are they both facing?
Oh, I think they're facing from now on. I mean, they're both convicted basically of the same. The highest charge is going to be the second degree murder, and they're both convicted on that. In Illinois, it's a class X, so it would be 6 to 30 mandatory. But with all those other charges and other aggravating factors, I'm sure they're looking at, you know, up to life.
Right, right. Well, this case involved a history of alleged stalking and domestic violence. From a law enforcement perspective, how do officers typically handle situations like this before they escalate to something as tragic as murder?
It's so difficult. These domestic situations are so difficult. You really feel for the victims in this because, a lot of times when they're in these positions where they're victims of domestic violence, repeated domestic violence, there was really no escape for them. I mean, it's hard to tell somebody to leave your home, go into a shelter, stay away from where your family is. It's very difficult, and that's why we see they go back almost all the time, and it ends up, depending on how much it escalates, a lot of the times it ends up just like this one did, where just the violence keeps escalating, and then there just doesn't seem to be anything for the victims to do to get away.
Yeah, just a very, very sad case all the way around. And we know the suspects fled the scene, but police were able to track them down quickly thanks to people calling 911. Can you walk us through how law enforcement conducts manhunts in cases like this and how crucial eyewitnesses were in their arrests?
Oh, very crucial, especially since we're talking about the victim, who was the original victim of the domestic disturbance. She's dead, so she's no longer a witness. The surviving witness, the people that witnessed it happen, the any kind of red light cams, any kind of surveillance cams, all huge. As far as tracking them down, you get on the radio, you start talking about the person last seen driving this vehicle in this direction. Then it goes out as an all call to bordering agencies and county agencies, and even possibly if they have a helicopter in the air, they use that. Um, I think I read that the mom stayed on scene while the other offender ran into the woods or ran away, but was caught quickly. That could have been done either by foot pursuit or even dogs, canine, and then forward-looking infrared on a helicopter. And I don't know if that was done, but that's how we would go into a manhunt trying to find a suspect.
And walk us through that. Like, I know they said a lot of people were calling 911 saying, hey, this is what the car looks like. I saw this type of car drive off, or I saw this person run. They were wearing this color shirt. How just helpful is that? And does it, break down the time instead of maybe taking, an hour to find them? Now you can find them in like 30 minutes or so?
Sure, it's very crucial. What eyewitnesses see and descriptions you get out, the quicker you get it out, the better. Now, where you run into a problem sometimes is you'll see a car fleeing a scene. People believe that possibly that car was involved, but in reality, that car was just trying to get away from the whole situation. So sometimes you'll get conflicting descriptions of vehicles, and you have to take that into consideration. Which way do your resources go for this or that? So what you do on that is you have to analyze what calls are coming in. If I've got 10 calls saying it's this car and 2 saying it's that car, it's probably the first set of callers.
And just going in deeper into the case, the prosecution argued that Weatherford's involvement, that is the mother, was driving the getaway car. They said that was key to securing her conviction. How often do we see family members involved in crimes like this, and what kind of precedent does this set legally?
What we see typically in situations like this is not the family members directly involved in the crime, like the mother was in this one, actually assisting in helping them get away or pursuing a car while the son is shooting out the window at another car. That's totally different. We get situations where after the fact, family members will help. They'll try to hide people to maybe even help try to cover up the crime. But this is something we see in the felony murder rule, which is if I'm going to do a bank robbery and I'm driving the car and I know what's going on, anybody that gets killed inside is on me as well. It's acting in concert. This person, the mother, obviously was acting in concert, and they proved it.
Right. So even though she didn't, shoot the gun herself because she was there and driving the car, that's how she was able to get those 19 counts.
Sure, because if she didn't drive the car, there would have been no pursuit unless he pushed her out and took it himself.
Right, right, true. Well, and then lastly, the case highlights the dangers of domestic violence situations escalating into deadly encounters. What can law enforcement do to better protect victims before it gets too late?
It's so difficult to do this because of a resource standpoint. You can't assign every domestic violence person their own police officer, unfortunately. But there just has to be, we have to try to figure out a way. We try to give people domestic violence forms. We try to put them in contact with counselors and shelters. We just have to do better at getting the victims of domestic violence opportunities to separate themselves from the offender. You can do an order of protection all you want. It's a piece of paper. That person's going to violate, if that person is intent on doing harm, they're going to violate the order of protection. They're not going to care about that. So it's nice to have these documents in place because then it's an automatic arrest when you see them. But if it's escalating to the point of that level of violence, the only way to do it is to try to separate that person from the situation if you can.
Well, very sad situation, definitely, with this story. Thank you so much, Will, for joining me today.
Sure, anytime. McLilly
and Weatherford will both be back in court on March 10th for their sentencing hearing. For Law and Crime, I'm Kennedi Walker.